Discreetly hidden all around us, plastic has crept into our lives, to the point of taking up far too much space. We buy it, we use it, and we throw it away. Plastic can't be disposed of in the compost because it doesn't biodegrade. It may break up into microscopic pieces, but it's still present somewhere. What happens to plastic once it's no longer in use? More than just a question, it's an observation made by a group of young people in Bali facing the uncontrollable invasion of plastic in the environment. Bali, paradise of tourism, luxury resorts, and fine sandy beaches. But far from the picture postcard version is another world. A world of plastic hell. Melati is a young activist. This issue has become fundamental to her daily life.
Hi, our names are Melati and Isabel.
We both have been living in Bali since our birth. We love it, we enjoy it, but we also want to take care of it.
We are here to show you our action called Bye Bye Plastic Bags on Bali.
Growing up, she saw plastic accumulate and pollute her blissful environment. At the age of 12, she decided to act alongside her younger sister.
Kita dari tim Bye Bye Plastic Bags! Bye Bye Plastic Bags is an initiative started by children.
In 2013, we started with no business plan or strategy, but what we did have was that clear vision, right? Bali becoming plastic bag free. Because as 10 and 12-year-olds, it was as simple as that. We wanted to say bye-bye to plastic bags. We needed the systems to change. We could, do as many cleanups as we wanted, but how many more cleanups until this stops? We could do as many presentations and as many workshops as possible, but how many more until it all changes? So for us as 10 and 12-year-olds and, with our team of other young people, we knew we had to work with governments, we had to work with corporations if we wanted large systemic change. And so that's what we did. We spent a lot of time with governments, a lot of time with CEOs and general managers of big market chains and things like that. The law came into effect middle of 2019, and it had been in the work for some time, and effectively it came in middle of the year of 2019. We had about 6 months of incredible transformation, and then the pandemic hit. We wanted so desperately to keep this ban and keep this law in full practice in the implementation phase, right? Because it was still fresh, it was still new, we still had a lot of work to do in terms of implementing the law. But then a crisis like the pandemic hit, and it really set the conversation on plastic all the way back, because all of a sudden priorities and global narratives shifted.
There are many environmental activists who are fighting on a daily basis. In Geneva, David Azoulay works in a different field. From his office, he's engaged in a day-to-day fight against plastic pollution, and is well placed to talk about the law that Melati succeeded in putting in place. His aim is to strengthen international environmental law and reduce plastic production.
Hello, David Azoulay.
Good evening.
You're Director of the Environmental Health Programme for the Centre for International Environmental Law, which gives us a neat acronym in French, CIEL. So you're campaigning to reduce plastic production, aren't you?
That's right.
So what does that mean exactly?
It means putting in place rules limiting the production of plastic. It's as simple as that.
Our work is far from over. Even though we have the signature and the stamp and the policy in place, it's a piece of paper that sits in the shelf of a governor's office. If it's not implemented into changing everyday life, our work is not over. So what we do with bioplastic bags is still revamping all of the education, the mindset shift that we need people to have. So we spend a lot of time talking to business owners, spend a lot of time in classrooms, hosting workshops and presentations, because it's really this implementation that needs to be in place.
Bye-bye Plastic Bags succeeded in getting legislation passed banning plastic bags in Bali. However, plastic bags can still be found because there's an issue of implementation and enforcement of the law. And this issue goes beyond the question of plastics. It's a question of political will, of resources and priorities. The only way to change the production methods and the activities of multinationals is through legislation. But the law still has to be applied. It's all very well telling people they can no longer use plastic bags if you don't offer them alternatives. No one's offering people a change in the distribution system, enabling access to the goods they need. It doesn't work. We have to deal with the issue of plastic over its entire life cycle.
With no power to change the production and manufacture of plastics, all the young activists can do is observe how plastics have invaded and damaged their environment.
We see the changes happening in our environment. We see the plastic becoming more and more in our faces here.
This video clip was made by Melati's friend, activist Kelly Bencheghib, to raise awareness of the plastic pollution accumulating on the beaches of Bali.
And actually we met through working. So that's also something that is really special, having a partner in life that gets it. You know, if you have to do a late night conference or an early morning beach cleanup, we got it. And we have each other's back a lot. But Sungai Watch is an incredible river cleanup community where, you know, all the work is about preventing the plastic from reaching the ocean before it even gets there in the rivers with these barrier technology.
Along with his brother Sam and sister Kelly, Gary founded the organization Make a Change World to produce videos to raise awareness of and denounce the plastic issue in Bali. To create a bigger impact, they went on to create the Sungai Watch organization, whose mission is to depollute rivers and stop plastic reaching the ocean. Originally from France, they grew up in Bali and witnessed how their magnificent beaches were gradually being submerged in plastic waste. They started by cleaning up the beaches with groups of friends every Saturday, storing the rubbish in their parents' garage. This was how their fight began.
Seeing my playground covered in plastic and seeing it getting worse over the years was the start and trigger to my activism against plastic pollution. That was 11 years ago today. And to join this fight, I was and still am accompanied by my first two playmates, my brothers, Gary and Sam.
In the south of Bali, in the mangrove forests typical of the tropical coastline, the young activists are in the midst of a cleanup operation. Here, plastic has taken the water's place.
We are currently in the mangroves of South Bali, just off the airport, next to one of the most touristic areas of the island, Nusa Dua, where the G20 is going to be hosted, literally 500 meters from one of the main convention centers, and this is the dark side of Bali. One that not many tourists see, one that not many politicians know about. We literally have been, cleaning the mangroves now for the last 7 months. Upon our mission, we're looking at every single river on the island of Bali, trying to stop trash before it flows out into the ocean. But the more we go inside of the mangroves, the more we stumble upon plastic apocalypse like this. And it's never ending. It's, literally horror. This has been happening potentially for 20 years, 15 years. The entire river behind me is clogged in plastic and you can't see water.
So today, I'm just sorting plastic bags, which is the #1 thing we find in the rivers of Bali, or just in general. And it's everywhere.
I think the passion is there. We love our island so much that we're never gonna stop, even though we'll have maybe a few days of discouragement. We see mangroves where the mangrove shoots are just coming back again. Birds, we hear birds singing, and so these are the things that really keep us going. I'm just wanting to see fishes again here. I don't know, we saw a fisherman earlier down the river, and I'm really not sure what he was fishing. But just like having that economy come back again and just like, bringing nature back to its initial beautiful state. But there's a lot of work to be done.
Thanks to their efforts and perseverance, Gary, Sam, and Kelly and their organization have succeeded in installing over 170 barriers on Bali's rivers and collected more than 800,000 kilos of plastic.
the importance of rivers, and when you really look at plastic pollution as a problem, everyone speaks about ocean pollution, and once plastic enters the ocean, it's virtually too late. With the sun hitting it and just the salt water, it's very difficult to, one, collect because the ocean is really big, but also to recycle the plastic once it actually reaches salt water. So if we can clean our rivers and stop plastic from going into the ocean in the first place, I think there's a lot of value in that. Anyone can install a barrier. It's a very simple technology. You can build a barrier any type of way. You could use bamboo, you could just use a branch or a net. So it's very easy to install a barrier. But the difficult thing is to collect the trash every day. If they can see our team every day cleaning rivers and going and doing the hard work, because this is not easy work. You have to be in this hot sun. Bali is really humid. The temperature is very high. The water sometimes will go up to your neck, and you have to clean this trash up manually. It smells horrible. We'll find dead animals amongst the trash. I mean, it's not easy work, but I think people are seeing that, and it's very visual.
So we've seen already, in such short time, there's one river in Denpasar where we placed a barrier 8 months ago, and it was entirely clogged in plastic. We fully cleaned it up with the local government, and now there's fish that have come back into it. So nature can be so resilient. The mangroves of South Bali, 22 hectares that we've cleaned up in 6 months, the mangroves are coming back to life.
A river of plastic where the water is invisible. Despite this terrifying reality, the siblings are trying to stay positive in the hope of one day seeing a river of water again. Sam and Gary's expedition on the Citarum River was a revelation.
In 2017, when my brothers traveled down the Citarum River, I gave my notice at once and decided to work full-time with Make a Change World, which was like our production company at the time for video content about environment and awareness campaigns.
It was guaranteed that I was gonna be a banker like my dad or work in business. Then this Citarum expedition happened. It's the worst experience we've ever gone through.
In August 2017, Sam and Gary decided to go down the Citarum River to measure the extent of plastic pollution.
We thought, look, if we're gonna go down this river, might as well choose the most polluted river in the world. The Citarum, which we were very, very shocked, that was literally located on the island next to Bali, the island that we grew up in. Java, the most populated island in the world. We thought that by floating down on trash and literally getting a visual of a boat with trash everywhere would probably be the most shocking visual to show the physical journey of plastics in rivers on its way to the ocean and retrace it from source to sea.
Everybody needs to experience this. And when you're standing on this land with your feet in the soil and you see plastic on it dripping into the river, then you know that's directly connected to you.
All of these plastics that we see, they're single use. Whether it's in the form of burned into the soil or still a solid straw, we use once.
We use so much of it without even thinking about the consequences. People see a problem and they think, I'll just toss my bottle back into the river as well because it's already there. But that's not true. It's always about making that difference one bag at a time, one straw at a time, one plastic bottle at a time. It's doing your part in this very big picture, this very big problem that we face, making sure you're part of the solution.
Despite the horrific sight on this river, Gary, Sam, and Kelly are united with one goal in mind: to prevent the plastic from reaching the ocean.
Since we started cleaning beaches, cleaning rivers now, everything we do is we do together.
What motivates me and keeps me going is to be able to work with my brothers. I think there's a complicity between us, so that when one of us loses a bit of motivation, the other two are there to boost the third.
Plastic pollution is not a problem unique to Asia. It can exist in developed countries too. Melati and her sister were already aware of the problem of plastic bags back in 2012. In France, awareness took a bit longer, but plastic bags are now banned in supermarkets. These bags are extremely polluting. They only take 1 second to be made. They're generally used for only 20 minutes, but it can take up to 400 years for them to degrade in nature, without really ever disappearing.
18 months from now, single-use plastic bags will no longer be available in supermarkets.
Every year in France, 12 billion plastic bags are used. Several millions of them end up in the sea.
From July the 1st, 2016, single-use plastic bags will be banned from all shops selling goods, food and services. The aim of the energy transition law is to ban them for good.
On the customer side, everyone is carrying on using plastic bags. Reusable bags are rarely seen, even if some people understand the council's decision.
Plastic pollution has for a long time been associated with ocean pollution. Julien and Wosnitza is a young activist who is fighting this pollution and wants to raise awareness.
Here's some polystyrene. And there's some more over there, see? It's never ending. Never ending. We have a tendency to give lessons to people in Indonesia, in Asia, as a whole, pointing out the disgusting plastic pollution over there. But you just need to come here to Châteauneuf-les-Martigues, to the Île des Trois Frères, and I can show you what it's like to have 6 tons of plastic over 200 square meters on a deserted island in the south of France, just 30 minutes from Marseille city centre.
A finance graduate, Julien left his job at the bank to follow the NGO Sea Shepherd. It was the beginning of his ecological awakening. His vision of society led him to write a book, Why Everything is Going to Collapse.
Our civilization is going to collapse, so I wrote a book. Nothing else had been written about it in a simple way. He's convinced that it's inevitable. The world is going to collapse.
According to them, the world will just simply collapse.
You're the author of Why Everything is Going to Collapse. I'm 24 and I've realized that our civilization is going to collapse.
Despite his pessimism, in 2018 he created the organization Wings of the Ocean to combat the proliferation of plastics in the oceans.
When I set up the charity, people said to me, but you wrote about collapsology. Does that mean you lost faith? Why did you turn into a full-time activist if you don't think it'll work? That it won't have any impact and won't help change the world?
Wings of the Ocean began by carrying out cleanup operations at sea, but has now become the leading organization for collecting litter in France. He was joined in this undertaking by his sister, Marie, who was responsible for the organization's first onshore mission. They dropped anchor at the Étang de Berre to clean up the area. Together with volunteers, they're fighting plastic pollution by collecting waste and raising awareness.
You really have to get the message across to people who are totally unaware of the problem. And the more work we do here, the more we realize that it's true. People are just not aware of the situation. I don't know if they're filtering it all out, but they just don't see all this waste around them. They don't even notice it when they're out and about. So it's really about reaching out to these people and talking to them. Can you see the difference between this and that?
That's soft. It's almost like paper.
Yes, that's soft plastic and that's hard plastic. You have to separate them. And what's this?
Soft.
Soft?
Yeah.
Look, touch it. You see, it moves a bit, but this one is a bit harder, you see? And so over time, it all comes apart and degrades. And it turns into hundreds and thousands of microplastics, tiny bits of plastic, which are then eaten by fish, by birds, and get into the whole ecosystem.
It poisons them and they die.
That's right. Do you see how much it disintegrates? The youngsters are really much more aware of ecological issues compared to older people. So that's clearly positive. This is going to be the case for a while, I think. But it's important for young people to be aware now because it's their future which is at stake.
The capacity of the biosphere to absorb synthetic materials such as plastics and petrochemicals has now been exceeded. Phyto and zooplankton are the chief mechanisms which turn the oceans into carbon sinks. Plastics in the oceans are reducing the reproductive capacities of these planktons. Oceans are the areas of the planet which absorb the most CO2. However, the plastic we produce, and that ends up in the oceans, even if we no longer see it, will reduce the capacity of oceans to work as a carbon sink.
I really became aware of pollution at the first clean-up. There's a photo of me on social media with my mouth wide open in shock, because frankly, it was so alarming. The number of small polystyrene balls, the amount of tiny bits of microplastics, which had been gradually decomposing on this beach. And this was just one beach, out of all the beaches in the world.
Almost all of that is polystyrene. And it's the sort of polystyrene that we can no longer pick up. It's going to decompose into tiny little fragments and be ingested by fish. And unfortunately, that's when it's too late. And there's more here in the rocks. Ridiculously huge amounts of all kinds.
The organization is fighting against all types of plastic pollution affecting the lagoon, packaging, tires, or even fishing nets.
When you see how difficult it is for us, how do you expect the fish to cope?
It's impossible.
It's really, really stuck.
There's quite a few threads left.
When you do your first cleanups, you think that the amount of plastic everywhere is just mind-blowing. And you've only been on one small beach among the countless beaches around the world. So you start thinking that it must be like this everywhere. And you carry on, and the first 10, 15, 20, 50 beaches are really difficult to take. But now, I just tell myself that I'm doing my own little bit in the world, and I simply try to do what I can. Today is the first cleanup for many of these volunteers at Wings. They just arrived at the beginning of the week, and so it's their first cleanup with us. It's fascinating. There are lots of positive moments as well, for sure.
In spite of the many positive aspects, it's not always easy to get businesses to listen. To ensure the survival of the organization, volunteers and employees rely on unsold food, which doesn't always meet with their values.
We receive a great many donations, and we tell them what our criteria are. The fact that we're trying to live with zero waste, eat locally and seasonally. But then we find ourselves with donations which clearly go against what we stand for. And this is really awkward. For example, we asked for sugar from this company, and they sent us individual doses. So you can say that we've really got our work cut out. In any case, it all comes down to where the money is. For example, plastic is created by oil, and oil is still being produced and consumed. So while the system still exists where companies earn millions selling plastic, consumer use is not going to change. They influence how we consume. When you go to the supermarket, there's no choice. We're even encouraged to buy cheaper fruit wrapped in plastic. It sounds horrible to say, but it's not by picking up rubbish and running awareness courses that things are going to fundamentally change. People will be aware locally and this beach will be free from litter, which won't end up in the ocean. So there's that. But everything needs to be dealt with at source, and until it is, nothing will change.
We often ask ourselves if it's possible to change the way multinationals produce and the way we consume. My answer is that we have no choice. It's the only possible solution to the planetary crisis which we're enduring. The way in which we produce and consume resources as a society isn't sustainable and is destroying our capacity to survive on this planet.
Since 1950, less than 10% of plastic products worldwide have been recycled. So where does the plastic that we've used and thrown away end up? This is the question posed by the activist Nina Zara, the youngest participant at the Plastic Health Summit, a conference dealing with the impact of plastics on health.
Do you know what will happen to your trash after you throw it to your recycle bin? You don't know? Let me tell you. So, your trash can be ended up being dumped and burned at people's front yard in Bangun village, a village that located 20 minutes from my house in East Java, Indonesia.
In the eastern part of the island of Java in Indonesia, Surabaya is a city of 5.6 million inhabitants. Here, most rubbish is not sorted. It ends up on the streets or in illegal dumps where it will be burnt. The rest is found in landfill sites. Eshnina, aka Nina, whose parents are an activist and a biologist, is a normal 14-year-old girl, and yet she spends her life surrounded by plastic waste. Her wish is to get rid of it and make the world finally open its eyes to the reality of the impact of plastic. For Nina, the shock came when she found out that the country's landfill sites include waste imported from abroad. Even though Indonesia can't process its own volume of waste, it nevertheless receives our rubbish too. At school, instead of worrying about the normal concerns of a girl her age, Nina tells her friends about the dangers of plastic.
Mari ngono kene libur seminggu, sampai lebaran pokoknya. Aku nggak mikir ya, saatnya untuk diet plastik sekali pakai. Ini kan hari bumi kan, terus aku demo ambek timku nang Surabaya. When we go to the river, when we go to the beaches, when we go to the, forest, we always see plastic waste. We always see it everywhere. Plastic has become a very, very big problem and very serious problem. Yeah, I really wanted to save this environment. I really want to work about the environment. I really like to writing. I express myself with write. So I just thinking about the easiest way for me to do action. So I decided to write letters to the America because at that year America is the most the most country who export their plastic waste to Indonesia. So I decided to write letters to Donald Trump. So this is my letter that I wrote. This one is from President Donald Trump in 2019. This is my letter to Prime Minister of Australia. This is my letter to Minister also in Netherlands, Amsterdam. And this is also my letter to the America. And I add some photos here about the illegal dump site, about their plastic waste. And this is my photo in the imported plastic piles, trash. And yeah, it's actually, I add this photo to be like the evidence. So this is real. We're not joking, we're not telling lies, because I have the evidence. I already taken a picture of your waste.
US is one of the biggest exporters of waste to Indonesia, but they're not the only ones. And since there's no waste collection and management system, plastic ends up in the environment and in illegal dumps. Nina and the team of her organization Ecological are on the ground to raise awareness and call out those responsible.
So right now, me and my team, River Warrior and Ecological, 20 of us, we are going to do brand audit. So we collect the waste that have the brand on it, and then we will collect it and we audit the brands so that we know what producers is the most polluters. Yeah. And after we know who are the top polluters, the producers, we will ask them for the responsibilities. We will ask them to clean up the illegal dump site because of their waste, and we will ask them to redesign their products, their packaging from plastic to more reusable or refillable. Dating icip bangkai. Kena mangrove ya, Ustaz. You know, the developed country, they always give us I always saw them at the TV. Like the waste management in France is very good. Indonesia have to do the same way, same thing, And after I know that those countries are sending their plastic waste here to the developing countries that we already have a lot of waste problem, and they add another burden to us, it's really, shock, yeah. I'm really surprised. So we collected this waste from Bangun village near my house, near my village. This Bangun village become a dump site for the developed countries. And so we are undercover. We made it to be a museum so that it will be the evidence that the developed country have been treating Indonesia like a dumping ground. Mau di India.
Nina has built a museum from the rubbish she's collected. She and her friends analyze the origin of each piece of plastic waste, which comes from the four corners of the world. But some boxes fill up quicker than others.
Iya, Starbucks. Iya ya, kok melok-melok ya namanya. Tidak keren. Plagiat tuh. I didn't mind to go in a dirty place. I didn't mind in a very big dustbin because I really need the evidence. I really need the data. I have to show to people, I have to show to the young generation that this is real. This is the evidence,
Countries like ours advocate sorting and recycling. So why does this waste end up in Indonesia?
It's because we produce far more plastic than we know what to do with. We don't have the resources to deal with all the plastic we consume. We don't know what to do with it. And above all, there are some plastics that we just can't do anything with. Actually, most plastic waste today is collected and compacted together and sent abroad. China has put in place a policy to stop accepting foreign plastic waste. This was a hammer blow in the world of plastics and plastic waste because China absorbed 50 to 60% of the world's plastic production. So very quickly, we had to find other places to send our plastic waste. We tried to make this plastic disappear by sending it out of sight so that consumers, who even if they're aware and try to be careful, will still carry on buying and using plastic, as if nothing was wrong. It means we're in constant denial of the reality of plastic.
Plastic doesn't degrade, can't be recycled, and ends up in the environment. This plastic wasted doesn't just have an aesthetic impact, it carries with it a whole host of problems. Nina and her mother live next to a river, from which they regularly take samples to analyze the degree of microplastics in the water.
There's a lot of talk about the impact of plastics on the environment, the visible impact. But the most important impact, in my opinion, is an almost invisible one. It's the impact on human health. It's important to understand that it's not the same as the visible pollution, of which we're already aware. The impact on human health takes place over the whole life cycle of plastic. Extraction, processing, use and disposal. Plastic is an aggregate of elements which themselves are toxic or have an effect on health. So we're exposed to these substances when we use plastic, when we burn it, and when we reprocess it. The more the plastic is exposed to environmental elements such as water, wind, and UV rays, the more brittle the matrix will become, and the more these chemical substances will be released, exposing us to them. But this isn't the only impact on health when you see these rivers in Bali or elsewhere. Plastics can also act as carriers, protective elements, or concentrations of numerous viruses and bacteria.
Gary and Sam had already observed this impact on health on their first expedition down the Citarum River in Java.
The water was like black, entirely filled with plastics. My immune system since the Citarum has never been so bad. I remember victoriously jumping at the end when I got to the Java Sea after 2 weeks of rowing, so happy that we made it. And like an idiot, I jump out of my kayak, gulp a big gulp of water, and for the next 2 weeks, I'm like completely out with just bacteria in my stomach. And I think since then, it's been, whatever opportunity that my immune is weak, I get sick instantly.
Jumping in a river like that is a real health risk. Whether it comes to processing plastic waste, whether it's done in a controlled environment, like the highly regulated incinerators that we have in Europe, or in much less organized ways, like we see in Indonesia or elsewhere, where plastic is burnt in illegal open-air dumps, the problem is the same. When you burn plastic, the combination of carbon and chemicals produce some of the most toxic substances that humans have created. Dioxins are the most carcinogenic substances out there. Burning plastic in the open air produces dioxins, as well as releasing carbon into the atmosphere, which will have an impact on climate change. These substances will fill the air and then be redeposited in the soil, in plants and everywhere else.
He's working in the illegal dump site. He is burning the plastic waste. So as you can see, this is already burnt. This waste is already burnt, and it is very dangerous for us to burn plastic waste. So if you burn it, it will also release greenhouse gases and also dioxin, which is so dangerous for the environment and dangerous for our health. Yeah.
We're exporting our chemical pollution. We're exporting cancers, as well as many other harmful effects on health, which people will get without knowing, without being aware, or having the means to defend or protect themselves.
Refuse single-use plastic!
This is where the generation of activists have come from. Since they're directly impacted by our way of life, our consumer way of life, they've risen up and are trying to ensure that the communities where they live and have grown up are protected.
When I am still very young, my parents always took me to the river, right? When I would grow up, when I was maybe like 12 years old, I come back into that river to check about the river quality. And I'm really, really surprised that the river is changed a lot. It's like a different river. So when I visited when I was very young, it's still so clean, a lot of fishes, a lot of, stones. But now, plastic waste piles everywhere in the riverbank and also in the river. and the water is become brown. It's not clean anymore. It's already polluted by plastic, by the industrial waste. And even I saw a lot of fish that died. They're floating in the river, and it's make me feel so shocked, and I still cannot believe it. I am really scared that in the future, I cannot play in the beautiful river anymore. I cannot breathe clean air. I cannot drink clean water, and I'm really worried about that. Yeah. So at that time, I really scared and worried about my future. So yes, at that time, I really, really shocked. That really hurts me. Yeah.
To extricate ourselves from the problems of plastic, we have to get rid of it. One of Sungai Watch's solutions is to recycle plastic into other products, but this requires a complex and costly industrial process.
After now that we started Sungai Watch, I look at this and I'm like, oh, money! And this is not the way we should be thinking, but unfortunately, because there's so much of it, we have to start thinking about how do we turn this into value, and how do we pick this up and not just put it somewhere else, but how do we create a use out of it?
I think one of the things that we don't realize is that when you're doing cleanups, you ultimately also need a place for treatment, which many organizations in the space don't necessarily do. It's a full process.
The accumulation of waste rapidly comes up against the problem of lack of processing capacity. What can be done with all this waste? Sungai Watch soon realized that in order to recycle and sell it all, they had to create an infrastructure for collecting, sorting, and cleaning the waste.
So once our team will have sorted the waste from the cleanups, and we'll have separated the sachets, the plastic bags, and the bottles, we then do secondary sorting, where we'll not only divide the bottles per types of color, and everything is a different value. So the labels we can actually resell as well in the market. Then we have bottle tops as well, which is considered hard plastic and is actually one of the plastics that is the most upcycled around the world in terms of like plastic sheets and whatnot. The trash that we collect is extremely dirty. So the ones that we collect in the river, sometimes it's had a first wash just with the river's water. But whatever we collect in the mangroves and the many illegal landfills that we collect, it's full of mud, it's full of, sometimes you have the plastic bags that are full of other stuff inside, so we take it all off, and then the important part is to wash it because we want to upcycle it afterwards.
So right now we're making a sheet out of PP water cups, and it's single use, so they use it once, throw it out. And so we're washing all of them, sorting them by color, and so this is the transparent one, shredding them so that it becomes, it turns into this fine shredded plastic that we're then able to put into this hot press machine. We press it together for about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the material and the type of plastic. And then it'll melt, bind together, and turn into really cool 1 meter by 1 meter sheets that we're able to turn into products. So we're doing some tests. Really excited to finally give this plastic that would have gone to the ocean into some value. We're now working into turning this into furniture, so into things like tables or chairs, and also doing some tests with roof tiles or floor tiles. And really, I mean, the sky's the limit. Once you have this sheet, you can really turn it into anything.
The irony's not lost on us when Sam shows us a rubbish bin made from waste.
This is a bin. So a bin made from 100% plastic bags. We're now using these bins and placing them out throughout villages in Bali to create a bin made from trash.
Even if we drastically increased our capacity to collect and treat waste, which we don't currently know how to do, in 20 years, the quantity of plastic ending up in the environment will have carried on increasing, because our capacity to process it will never be enough, regardless of how ambitious or optimistic we are.
Va toujours moins vite que l'augmentation de la production.
Wouldn't the best solution to the plastic crisis be to tackle the problem at the source? Mora's mission is to raise awareness and educate children, not just about the consequences, but above all providing practical, everyday solutions.
Dikasih sampah plastik jadi cemberut.
Marquis! No plastic! Responsible! No plastic! I reduce! No plastic! I act! No plastic! Selamat siang semuanya! Siang! Tepuk tangan!
At the time, I was ignorant, like everyone else, I guess. I was polluting my environment, and I used single-use plastic a lot. And that's because I don't have this upbringing to educate myself and surrounding about plastic pollution.
Maju 3 kota.
Mobilizing Plastic is an NGO that uses art and creative tools to educate children about plastic pollution. The mission of Mobilizing Plastic is to create more educators who will be the role model for their own family, friends. So when we come to the community to share this knowledge about plastic pollution, at the same time, we give them practical solutions. If we want the child to stop using plastic bottle, we should bring them a reusable bottle. If we want to see them not using plastic bags, we give them the tote bags. If we want them not to litter around, we give them the trash bins. And if they bring the bottle, but they do not know where to refill their bottle, we shall bring the water filter. Otherwise, how can they stop buying plastic if they do not have the reusable water bottle? I didn't have this opportunity to have an adult come to me and say, oh, Mora, there's a plastic pollution, there's ocean, there's coral reef. No, there's nobody saying this to me. But I am so happy to share this with the children, and that's my strength. Just to share and giving them the opportunity to learn new things, and then they will change to be a better adult. That's my priority, that's my mission, and nobody can take that.
As well as raising awareness, there's another way of reducing plastic pollution, which Nina and her family are trying to adopt, a zero-waste lifestyle.
I've seen a lot of people right now, they use plastic for wrap everything. Our food, our fish, our fruits. Everything is already wrapped in plastic right now. But actually for me, because I'm already used to it, my family, we already try our best to reduce single-use plastic. So it's actually not a big problem for me. I really don't mind to not using plastic, actually plastic bags. My grandmother, she told me that when she's very young, she always buy fish, always buy fruits in their own bag. So when my grandmother wanted to buy fish, the seller already gave a container organic basket. So it's a lot more cheap and more healthy and more sustainable. So we actually we try our best to reduce single-use plastic.
So it's up to us to live sustainably in the world around us. All these young activists are striving for a plastic-free environment. They've chosen an ambitious fight. They won't give up. Sungai Watch has developed its own barrier and collection system all the way to Java. In 2022, Wings of the Ocean collected 75,000 kilos of waste, cleaned up 3 million cubic meters, carried out 320 cleanups with the help of 7,000 volunteers.
These are just small-scale victories, but if everyone tries to do a little, the victories will become large-scale. It may be blind optimism, but that's how I see things, because otherwise we'll just be stuck where we are, and nothing will change.
With Wings of the Ocean, Julien is now confident that the organization can stand on its own 2 feet, and has handed the baton to other committed members to carry on the work.
I just do the best I can, but there'll never be any way of knowing if what I did changed the world or not. All I know is that it's going to shape the future of our planet. What that future may be, it'll be all we have.
As a young changemaker, I reflect a lot on the systems that we have in place, and if it doesn't work, why do we have them? and what needs to change to make it work. You know, so I'm very fascinated with things like that because we need to change drastically. You know, plastic is just a small step in the right direction. Come on, we do not have this time, and that's what young people recognize. We know we don't have the luxury of time. We know that we're running out of it. So for me, it's, you know, what are those systems we need in place to create scalable change?
This photo on my desk is of the moment that a decision was taken by the world's nations saying that plastic is a global problem that needs to be tackled. It's the culmination of 6 or 7 years of work, and I did shed a little tear or two. Now we're negotiating the treaty, which should be adopted in 2024, and in theory provide solutions that countries can put into place to put an end to the plastic pollution crisis.
Despite their victory, it's up to us to make the necessary efforts to live in harmony with the world around us, and for those who will live in tomorrow's world.
No more plastic bag, no plastic bottle, let's keep our earth clean. Tak ada tas plastik tanpa botol plastik, bumi kita fantastis. No plastik di jalan, hidupku jadi senang. No plastik di mana-mana, kurangi solusi.